What's up everyone, welcome back to another FPL video. Today we're going to be having a look and rating your FPL drafts. What's up everyone, welcome back to another video. So as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be having a look and rating some of the teams that you guys have sent in. Now there were over 300 entrants into the tweet to get rated in this video, so apologies if I haven't covered everyone, but I have chosen a selection of different teams with different structures, different players in, so hopefully one of these teams is something a bit like yours and you can take it away to discuss with your friends to develop your team as it is now. So let's get into them and hopefully there's something you can all learn. We're going to have a look at the positives of them, the negatives of them, a few talking points, and then give them an overall score out of 10. So the first team is up on screen and was sent in by FPL Adama on Twitter. So thank you very much for sending that in. It's a 3-5-2 draft and, you know, standout noticeable players. We've got Salah in there, new signing, Sancho already in the team, Havertz, Son. A big midfield there is the key to this team with a few budget players around it. Dunk, Lamptey in defence, Ben White on the bench now going to Arsenal, Trent in defence as well. So it does feel straight away like there's a good balance to this squad, but in terms of the positives that I've mentioned, there are some really nice, strong attacking defenders. So I always say you need to have defenders that can both keep clean sheets, yes, play for a team that have plenty of clean sheet potential, but also have that attacking threat. So we know Trent can do that, but Dunk has that goal threat. Lamptey has assist and goal potential. Ben White maybe slightly less, but going to Arsenal, we don't quite know exactly how he's going to play. So there is potential for White to step up his attacking returns a bit more, but the three starting in this team are definitely good to own. Now, there is talk about whether Lamptey will be back ready for the start of the season, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But if he's not, there are other 4.5 defenders that FPL Adama can trade him to. If not, he is definitely a great pick. Now, the midfield is very strong, but it's got a lot of nice differentials in there. So Havertz, Crystal Palace at home, definitely has potential to be a really nice pick for us this season. Son as well, he is such a good asset. He's done so well for us in previous seasons, but just doesn't seem to be getting in many drafts. I think if you can afford him, he's a really nice pick to own. And then new signing Sancho as well, a very nice option. Saves you a bit of money instead of going Bruno Fernandes, but we know what he can do. We saw him in the Euros. He's done it for Dortmund as well. So at 9.5, it's a bit of a question mark of how quickly he'll fit into that Manchester United team, but there's no doubt that he has the potential to be a great asset for us going forward. And I suppose with these differentials, it does feel like you're trying to beat the curve a little bit. These are players that a lot of people are talking about and know they could be great FPL assets, but don't quite have the guts to go with them for game week 1 and to start the season with them. But starting with them could be an absolute brainwave. It could be a brilliant strategy to start the season with all three of those, as well as some more reliable assets like Salah, Watkins and Tony in there, because if suddenly Havertz or Son and Sancho in particular start the season really well, everyone will be scrambling to get these players in. We know the potential they have, so yes, it's a bit of a risk to have them, but definitely they have potential to be really good differentials for us. In terms of the negatives, the bench for me is a bit weak. Only having Ben White in there is a bit much. Manquillo and Obafemi unlikely to get any minutes. So if Ben White, for example, has a really difficult fixture, then you really don't have any bench at all. So I would potentially look at upgrading one of your bench options, even if it's freeing up 0.5 million, so you can upgrade Manquillo to a 4.5 defender, for example. I think it's worth having a look at. And then as well as that, I don't love 5 in midfield formations. This season, there are so many great 4.5 midfielder options, which I talk about in a lot of other my videos, that it just doesn't make sense to go with 5 midfielders, because the likes of Brownhill, Gibbs-White, Gilmore, even Basuma can be really good options that you can have on your bench that just make your squad depth so much better. So whether this is upgrading Rafinha or Havertz or one of them to another forward potentially and playing 3-4-3, it would just help strengthen that squad depth a little bit more. The other one is there's a lack of solid captaincy decisions. Now, this is my opinion and not everyone agrees with the way I think on this, but I like to have 2 players that I would happily captain each and every single game week if I wanted to. Now, for me, this is quite a minimal pool of players and it does restrict me at times. However, for me, Salah is the only one in this team that I would do that. Sancho is unproven. Son potentially has some really nice fixtures early on, so you could argue Son, and then that would be fair enough. But I would potentially like one more of those really reliable captaincy options in this team that would just make it sort of so much stronger than it is now. Because for me, captaincy is so important, and I want two of these players in case one of them's off form, one of them's injured or something like that. I know I have someone I can fall back on no matter the fixture. And the other one is, yes, I spoke about having lots of those differentials, but for me, having Havertz, Son, Sancho is just, I think, one too many. So as I spoke about, potentially going for a 3-4-3 formation, if you could go Havertz to Calvert-Lewin or Son or Sancho upgraded, then that's probably the way I'd go. And I know it makes it maybe a little bit more template and a bit like all the other teams you're seeing, but it would have enough of that sort of differential potential with Son and Sancho or two of the three. And then you'd have that reliability as well as that potentially another captaincy option as well. So a few little tweaks there, but I really like a lot of the players and the way this team is shaping up. So I've given it an 8 out of 10. It's just a little bit of personal preference. On the grand scheme of things, it's a really nice team. I don't have much to complain about. There are a few things that I personally wouldn't do, but I can see why they are very popular with some of you. Moving on to our second team from Tom Muldoon. So straight away I can see, to start with, we've got some Man City players in here to talk about. A lot of people are a bit wary of owning Manchester City players, but we've got Mahrez and Jesus in here. There's a lot of good players on the bench as well here. So a good squad depth to start it off. But the real positives that I pulled out when looking at this draft is there are some really nice differentials. Mahrez in there, Maddison in there, I think Reguilon, Smith Rowe, players that a lot of people have spoken about but aren't very highly owned at the moment. Mahrez at Manchester City, we know what he's capable of. If he continues to start as many games as he did at the end of last season, then even with a tough fixture in Game Week 1, it gets easier with that Norwich fixture in Game Week 2, then definitely is a nice option at just 9 million. Maddison is an interesting one. I don't quite know how Leicester are going to shape up. It is likely that Maddison's in the starting lineup. He's so talented and one of their best players, but is it going to be a 3 front formation? Is it going to be 2, which means Maddison's slightly further forward? Exactly how it's going to be, I'd want to keep an eye on, but because it may impact exactly how Maddison lines up. Then the bench as well, Smith Rowe at 5.5 million is so underpriced, I think. Their starting fixtures aren't that great, and if you plan on benching him in Game Week 1 against Brentford, then I don't think he's particularly worth owning, and I'd just downgrade him to one of the 4.5 options in Brownhill or Gibbs-White and use that money elsewhere, whether it's to upgrade Soufal potentially or upgrade one of your forwards as well. That's what I do if you're not going to be starting Smith Rowe. As well as this good attacking defender, so both the 3 that are starting in Shaw, Trent, Soufal, but also the 2 on the bench in Lamptey and Reguilon, there is just so much attacking threat on top of the clean sheet potential that they all add. So clean sheets, yes, but getting up and down their respective fullback sides, putting crosses into the box, scoring goals, we know all 5 of those have really good potential. So yes, you may have a bit of a benching headache, but hopefully the ones that you play will be returning points anyway because you've got some really great defenders in there. And generally, I really like the core of this squad. So you've got a lot of the key players that I'd like to own. Trent's in there, Shaw, Soufal, Brighton defence and Sanchez in goal, Salah, Rafinha, Antonio, Watkins, with a few other differentials in there as well. So the core of this squad is really nice. But when we move on to the negatives, there are a few little tweaks that I would probably make. So I feel like there are a couple of rotation-prone players which I would be slightly concerned about owning. So Mahrez and Jesus both in the same team concerns me slightly. You're doubling up on that Pep Roulette and that attack. There's a lot of rotation that goes on, particularly with Jesus. I don't expect him to get that many minutes. Even if Harry Kane doesn't go to Manchester City, I don't think Jesus at Man City is a good option at all. So I'd probably look to trade him off. And if you want to go for the option with Mahrez, then go for it. But Jesus is not one for me. Smith Rowe should be playing every week, worth keeping an eye on, and Maddison as well. The 2 of them combined, probably you'll definitely have at least one of them starting every single week. It's just worth keeping an eye on pre-season for both of them. Of course, these teams can be changed a lot, so once we get to the start of the season, Tom will absolutely know what's going to happen with those 2 assets, but those are the ones that I'd be keeping an eye on. A little bit over-invested in the bench as well. So Smith Rowe, Lamptey, Reguilon is a lot of money to be spending on a bench for me. Smith Rowe down to a 4.5. Reguilon down to a 4.5 defender, 2 4.5 defenders, use that money elsewhere, upgrade Jesus almost up to someone. You're probably not that far off Harry Kane if you went and did something like that, and that would really strengthen this team. So those are probably what I do. You don't need Reguilon being last on your bench. If you plan on playing him from game week 2, then downgrade one of your other starting defenders. Look at how your team will line up in a few weeks, but it's a little bit headachy. Every week you're going to be thinking, I'm leaving so many points on my bench. I wish I had spare money that I could use to upgrade someone. I don't have enough money to buy lots of these expensive players, and that's because there's a lot of money left on the bench in this team. So this team structure is nice. I like the strength and depth, but it is just a little bit much for me. And finally, I suppose to combine with this, it means that there's a bit of a lack of captaincy options. So as I said with the previous team, I like to have 2 big captaincy options every week. Although you could argue with the previous one having Son and Sancho, they are nice options. But for me, this one has Salah and Salah only. Although he has nice fixtures and a lot of nice fixtures that you could captain him in at the start of the season, I would want another one in there. So whether it's upgrading Jesus to Kane, if you could do that, or going Mahrez up to De Bruyne, for example, or playing, if you had to, I don't love a 5 in midfield, but doing Jesus up to Bruno Fernandes, for example, because you want to keep Mahrez, then go for it. But I feel like this team will be very reliant on Salah to do well every week for the captaincy, and there's a few of those rotation-prone players in that starting 11 as well. So I've given this team a 7. I do like a lot of what's going on here. I do like some of the picks in isolation, but it's all of them combining together that I'm not a huge fan of. It just feels like it's gone a little bit too much differential for me with a few of those picks and a bit too much money spread around. So I don't hate it, but a 7 out of 10 for me. Next up, the third team of the video is sent in by It's Me Miles. So a bit different. We've got a 4 at the back system here with Trent, Lamptey, Shaw and Fofana in there, with a bench of Ayling in there as well. Salah, Højbjerg, Rafinha, Fernandes, Kane and Tony. So this team has got 4 big premiums in there with Trent, Salah, Kane and Fernandes as well. So in terms of the positives, it means with those 3 premiums that you've got really nice captaincy options. So completely the opposite of the 2 drafts we've seen previously. This person's not going to have a problem with not having someone to captain. There will be at least one out of those 3 that you'll be wanting to put the captaincy armband on every week. And if one of them goes crazy, a lot of us who only go with 2 of them might be scrambling to try and get the other third in. But this one is starting with a base of, I can downgrade these players. It's much easier to downgrade a premium than it is to try and stretch up to them and free a little bit of money to get them at the start. So it is a good strategy potentially to try and start with all 3 of those premiums. And I like some of the budget options that have been made in order to get them. So Lamptey, if he's fit, may be worth looking in case he's not. Ayling in there, Fofana, all really nice cheap options. And then Ivan Toney as well, I like a lot as a 6.5 forward, really well priced. Gilmour, potentially I'd go and have a look at Gibbs White of Wolves or Brownhill of Burnley. They feel like they're a little bit more attacking than Gilmour is, but that's a little nitpicky thing that I just think would help, and that's probably who I'd go with. However, moving on to the negatives, so there is a real massive lack of depth. So if you look at it, you think, okay, there's Ayling on the bench. You've got a 4.5 midfielder in the bench at the moment. However, Højbjerg is starting in your team each and every game week. So if you do bring in Ayling to start with Højbjerg, a 5-3-2, even with those 3 premiums, is not something that I really like. You have Backman in there as a sub keeper. I think given the fact that you're starting Højbjerg every week means that you can't really go with those 2 keepers. I'd pick Backman or Sanchez depending who you'd go on. This would allow you to upgrade Højbjerg to Smith Rowe, for example, which would straight away make your team much stronger than it looks at the moment, having to play Højbjerg every week. So yeah, it's just a little bit underbalanced. There are a few little picks in there that aren't particularly for me. So Fofana I don't love that much. I understand he's a starting Leicester defender for 4.5 million, but the attacking threat isn't there. I'm hoping Aït-Nouri of Wolves continues to start and he could be a really nice option. There are nice starting fixtures to Leicester's season, but he's just not a pick for me. So I like what's tried to be done here with those premiums. Let's have a play around, see if we can get 4 of them in, but it does just feel like it's gone a little bit underbalanced. You'll be relying very much on just a few key players each and every week. So I've given this team a 6. I think it's quite easily moved up to a 7, 8, 9. If, for example, you do Backman down to a 4.0 and you upgrade Højbjerg to Smith Rowe, that would probably make it a 7 straight away, if not slightly higher as well. So this team definitely has potential. maybe Fofana to a slightly more attacking defender, and then you're really on your way. So although it's a 6, it's not one that I think needs to be torn apart. There are definitely ways, if you do want to keep Salah, Kane, Fernandes, that this is a good base to do that. But yeah, there are a few little tweaks that I would go about making. Next up, the 4th team from JJ Luya on Twitter. Thank you everyone again for sending them in. If you haven't joined the league code down below, it is for subscribers only, and there are monthly prizes to give away to each and every one of you if you are doing well that month, so make sure you go and join that. The code is there, or there is a link in the description which will automatically join you into that league. So straight away, nice 3-4-3. A lot of people going with 3-4-3. It's a formation I do like this year. There's a lot of good forwards to go with, and there's a lot of budget options that you can go with 4.5 in defence that can help strengthen your bench as well. So definitely a formation I can see why is very popular at the moment. In terms of those positives, it's a very balanced team, so it's not overly invested in the bench. You do have 2 4.5 goalkeepers, which I don't love personally, but some people do it, so that's personal preference. Gilmour, again, not a bad option. There are others that I prefer. I'm not going to go on about it in every team, but a 4.5 midfielder, a 4.5 defender, and then he's got a 4.0 defender, I think is enough to have on your bench, especially if you've got Ayling. He's a good option to have on your bench, and then a nice 4.5 midfielder as well. I think it's a really well-balanced squad to start off. So there are also good captaincy options, so Salah, Son, and then De Bruyne as well. 3 players that I would probably be pretty happy with captaining every week. Son, maybe not every week, but a nice differential to have if he's in good form or he has a nice fixture as well. And then with De Bruyne. So I think having Son and De Bruyne together is more than enough of making up that second captaincy option that I do talk about. And there are just proven FPL assets. I think one big thing that people make the mistake of during the season, especially at the start, is going with players that there's a lot of hype around, that there's a lot of chat around, that aren't proven at all to be good in the Premier League, to be good FPL assets, that particularly at the start of the season, those transfers are so precious. You don't want to be taking -4s very early on into the season. So going with proven FPL assets is a real way to try and limit the number of hits that you'll be taking. And then I think I look at the team, attacking fullbacks, tick, good balance in midfield with some cheap options that can be great budgets in Rafinha there. And then 3 really nice proven forwards, and then Tony, proven in the Championship, but can definitely see why he's so popular. In terms of the weaknesses, these are very small things. So as I said, Gilmour, not my favourite. Rotating goalkeepers, again, it's a personal thing. And then there's a little bit of a lack of attacking threat from Fofana. Ayling's an interesting one, and then Williams is a dud option on the bench. So it's very small things with this team. I don't love De Bruyne as a pick. If Harry Kane comes, I'd much prefer him for 0.5 more. I don't quite know if you could do De Bruyne and Watkins to Buendia and Harry Kane if he goes to Manchester City, and that would probably bump this up to a higher ranking than it's given, but I have given this squad an 8. Son, De Bruyne I like, not necessarily the premiums I'd go with, potentially not having rotating goalkeepers and investing that slightly more elsewhere, looking for maybe a more attacking defender in terms of Fofana, but a really nice squad given that we are 2 weeks away from the start of the season and we're still waiting for pre-season stuff. I really like this team, and I wouldn't be surprised if plenty of people started the season with teams that look like this, so this is a really nice one. Moving on to the final draft of the video sent in by Ferran FPL over on Twitter. So 433, apologies for the quality of this picture. I did ask, but I did want to put it in because there's a lot of nice things to talk about with this team. It had to go in at the end. So positives, there's a lot of them. Strong team with good depth, a nice balance of depth, maybe slightly overdone with Rafinha. However, after game week 1, I imagine that Rafinha will go in and start over Lamptey. So then a 3-4-3 with Lamptey, Ayling, Brownhill on the bench is really nice. You could even downgrade one slightly, but that's a very nice bench, which will give you a very nice attacking defence, good midfield, and good front 3 as well. So it'll be very balanced, particularly if you're not having to bench Rafinha each and every week. Really nice captaincy options. So Salah, I like. Fernandes, the 2 of them, I've got them in my team at the moment because they are my most reliable captaincy options going into the start of the season, I think. So I like the pair of them a lot in there. Great, reliable. We know what they're going to offer, and then you've built around them very well indeed. There's not over-reliance on one team. I personally would potentially like a little bit of triple Liverpool. I think their fixtures are really nice, and they have some nice differentials outside of Trent and Salah, but you aren't over-invested in a team. You've only got double Liverpool, double Man U and then potentially Brighton, depending on if you start Lamptey, but you're not over relying. And this means that if one team that you think is going to do well doesn't do quite as well as you expected, then you're not left in the lurch and you could easily transfer one player out and not have any of them at all. So you're likely to have Man U and Liverpool doing well, and the rest of it is a pretty well spread balance. You've got proven FPL assets, which I really like as well. No one that I stand out and think, why has he got him in there? He's not done anything before. Barnes is the only one that I'm a bit like, I can see why people pick him. I don't quite know how he's going to fit into that Leicester team at the moment, but they have a nice start to the season. If he is playing in pre-season and he's back from injury and starting on the wing and they are playing a system that fits him in, then I think he'll be a really nice option. 7 million is a really good price given what we know he can offer from last season. Moving on to the negatives now. So very nitpicky things, maybe slightly overinvested in the bench if you've got Lamptey, Brownhill, Ayling, or if you're benching Rafinha because Brighton have really nice fixtures, but it's a very small thing. And I think if Lamptey's on the bench, then you're pretty well set given that he'll be first on the bench, Ayling and Brownhill there. But if you needed to free up 0.5 million to upgrade somewhere else, it was very easily done, downgrading Ayling, for example, to a 4.0 defender and then just having Lamptey and Brownhill, worth, of course, keeping an eye on Lamptey's fitness. And then potentially injury-prone players. So Shaw, Lamptey and Luka Dean, 3 of your defenders, and then Harvey Barnes as well. There is doubts about whether the 3 of those will be back and ready to start the season, and Antonio as well. So you could be left not knowing quite if those 5 players are going to start the season, which would be a bit difficult. But of course, this team, as of now, if those 5 players are going to be fit, if not, you can easily transfer them out before the start of the season. So worth keeping an eye on some of those things, but it's a really nice draft and it has got a 9 out of 10. So a great team to end the video on. Those are 5 drafts that I have really liked. A few things to talk about in them, very different, but I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, of course, please do smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you do have any questions about your team at all or your drafts or any comments in general, drop them in the comments down below and I will be more than happy to answer them in the comments or over on Twitter as well. But I hope you've enjoyed. This is all we've got time for and I will see you all very soon.